Hello, and welcome to the Simply Hosted Programming Guide. The Simply Hosted platform really programs exactly like an on-site Nimbus. So you'll find this to be a pretty short video. One of some of the main differences you're going to notice are the speed. It's a lot faster. You're going to be able to program it in much less time. It's going to save changes a lot faster. I mean, it's very noticeable. So I think that's a nice upgrade. But I did kind of want to walk you through the general programming for a simply hosted Nimbus. So the first thing that's going to happen, once everything clears, your customer gets the paperwork back and the first invoice is paid, you're going to be sent the public IP and the phones for the system. So the nice thing about that is you can start to do your programming if you choose to do your own programming right away. You don't have to wait till you're on site, or you don't have to wait till the Nimbus gets mailed to you. Keep in mind, CQ does offer complimentary programming at no charge. But if you have chosen to program it yourself, this video will help you kind of go through the process. So the first thing you'll get is that email. It's going to have the public IP in that email. So in this case, we're utilizing a new one, 149.28.119.217, and it is straight port 80. There is no port translation here. So we do like to lock these down. If you were to go to the servers we utilize, very strict firewall settings. So when they initially go out, only CQ can access it remotely. And then we open it up as you request. So we would obviously open it up to your public IP, so you could program it. And then the customer's public IP if they want to access the CDR or change ring groups. Or depends on how much access you want your customer to have to it. So in that email, we will be requesting your business IP, or the IP from which you wish to program it, to keep this Nimbus as secure as possible. So simply type in the public IP with no port into the web browser, and you should get the Nimbus landing page. And then at that point, the setup is very similar to having an on-site Nimbus. So there's a few things that are already going to be set up for you, which is really a bonus. So if you go to connectivity and go to trunks, you're going to find your SIP trunks are already here programmed for you. Because as soon as we get that information, we'll program it and put that in for you. So you don't have to worry about that. If you look at your asterisk SIP settings, it's already going to have your public IP here for you and your local network. So if you think about the hosted is a little bit different in terms of a local network. It's not like you're having a 192.168 local network. So the system will automatically put this in for you. You don't have to worry about it, and it's all set there. I've been doing some updates on this one. So just to give you an idea, that was the apply configs. If you've programmed Nimbuses before, you know that apply configs is not that fast. So this is all set. Your CHAN SIP is going to be all set with your public IP. Just verify that those are indeed correct. And then at this point, it's the same as any other system. You want to make your extensions. You want to make your inbound routes. If you want to make ring groups or auto attendants. I mean, by this time you've programmed in Nimbus before. And I'm not going to walk you through the entire programming because that's covered in certification and it's covered in previous videos. But you'd want to just go through the system as you normally would. Make your outbound routes, make your extensions, set up your email, but there's no difference there. The one thing you will notice is if you set up previous Nimbus before, if you think about every phone on a Simply Hosted is a remote phone. And you know that when you make a remote phone, there's one change you have to make in the system, and that's setting the NAT equal to yes. So the phone expects to cross over a NAT to reach the server. But the nice thing about the Simply Hosted here is if we were to add an extension, so let's just add 100. We won't actually add it. But notice what happens here under the advanced. It already has NAT set to yes for you. So a default setting in the Simply Hosted is already expecting these phones to be remote. So you don't have to worry about remembering that. It automatically knows that you're going to be making remote extensions. So I think that's a nice feature. Okay, so that's the Nimbus voice. There's really no difference in terms of programming, as I've mentioned, to an on-site Nimbus, except that you can get to it right away and program it very easily and quickly. The next part is programming the phones, okay? getting the templates to the phones, provisioning the phones. Now, if you've got 1 or 2 phones, maybe you want to program them manually, right? But if you want to use the provisioning tool, maybe you've got 6 or 10 or 15 phones, you want to make a template and you want to send it to the phones or have the phones come get it. I'd like to walk you through that stage. So under the tools and tests, so the first stage will be making your extensions. It's not going to work until you make them. So let me go ahead and just make one here. Okay. I mean, you can just tell the speed of which this system is moving at. So once you've made all of your extensions, we're going to go to tools and tests, and we're going to click on CQ phone provisioning. And you've probably programmed CQ phones before, but this does walk you through the steps here of how to do it. But you kind of want to work your way from left to right here. So start with your global settings. All right, now the global settings, you can see it's already programmed in here for you. It knows the LAN IP or the WAN IP. You know, in this case, it's local and WAN, but really you can just put it in once. So we've got our 149.28.119.217. I'm going to leave it in there. Change your time zone if you're Eastern or Central or daylight savings time if you want to change your user and admin section. And then come down here, and this is also where you can set your ringtones. So if you want to put an alert info in there, you can. Okay, you hit submit, and now it changes your settings up here at the top. So here's your system IP and time servers, passwords, ringtones. Then go to your template. So you'd want to make a template. So say, for example, we're working with a CQ600. You'd go to 600, we'll just call this dental template or whatever you want for yours. Now in this case, this next field is typically for an on-site Nimbus. So if you want to program these phones to be local or remote. For Simply Hosted, they're all remote. But in some ways, the system, it doesn't really matter. So if you want to change this to yes or no, since we only put in the local IP at the global settings, I'm just going to leave this as no. It's not going to matter. You'll see that in a second. So we set this up for some line keys. You know, you'd make your general template, and then you maybe want to make a call part key, and then a BLF, and a BLF. So program your buttons as you want them to be. So value for 70 is park. Then our first parking lot is 71. I won't bore you with setting up the entire template. But I will say, make it easy on yourself. Just set the remote template to no. That setting is really for an on-site Nimbus. So just give it a name, leave it at no, and you're all set. You're not going to have any problems. Right, we're going to hit Save Template. At this point, we've got our phone MAC entry. So now here's where it does differ a little bit. If you've got an on-premise Nimbus, you can scan the network. But for a Simply Hosted, you can't really scan the network because the Nimbus isn't on the same network as your phones right now. So in this case, typically, there's the 2 options that you're going to use are either uploading a file, which is just a CSV file of your MAC addresses, or you can put them in manually. So it depends on how many you have, right? How you want to handle that. I'm just going to go with the manual entry. So you want to input the MAC address, so 80, you can see there's going to be some here already. Right, let's just say that's one of your MAC addresses. Hit submit. That's going to place it right there. And then you want to keep adding them as you go along. So I've got one here, let's see. And the phone I'm working with is 064786. Okay. And you would just keep adding and adding, however many you need. If you've got 10 phones, you'd obviously add 10 MAC addresses. One little trick I like to use is I always like to add a blank space. It makes it easier for me when I'm programming it, or the next step actually. So once you've added your 5 or 10 MAC addresses, I'm going to leave this blank, and I'm just going to hit submit. Seems like kind of a weird thing to do, but it's a nice little feature here in a second. So I've got 2 MAC addresses and a blank space. If I had more phones, I would simply type them in, and I'd have all my MAC addresses here. So the next step at this point is to click here to assign the phones. So we're already on the same page. So right now it's going to take all of your extensions, and you just choose the MAC address. So the nice thing is by putting a space in here, it starts at a blank space. And then I just choose what MAC address I want to have this phone, what MAC address I want to be this extension. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this one. I'm going to choose my template. I only have one. And I'm going to hit Create Files. So right now, if you could look inside this Nimbus, what happened here was we just made a file, and the file name is the MAC address. And then inside that file is all of the programming, the SIP server address, what port to use, ringtone, what keys to program, so that when this MAC address checks in, if there's a file that matches its MAC address, it will then grab that file, even if it's a remote phone. Right? It's not going to matter. So obviously, if you've had 10 phones, you would have 10 extensions, different MAC addresses, and the same or different templates at this point. So at this point, you've made the file in the system. You successfully made a MAC address file. And like I said, if you could see in the file, you would see a dot. I could probably actually show it to you right now. This is kind of neat to look at. Go ahead. I think this helps you understand what's happening here. So this is the file structure of the Nimbus. And if you could go into the files, you'll see we have a CQ phone files folder. Right? And we've got some folders for MAC addresses here. This is just test ones that have all been created. But here's the one I most recently created today. You can see it's 1220. Notice the file is the MAC address.config. And then inside of it is all of the information that phone is going to come grab. Server address, port, secret. Down at the bottom, you'll find the key programming, like notice there's your part key. So that's kind of what's happening on the back end. The system is making a file, and that's really how any provisioning server works for any phone system, even if you were using third-party phones. Previously, if you could get inside the system, you would find a MAC file that matches up to every single phone. So if you did, these are all old ones, so I can go ahead and actually just delete these. So if you did, if you matched up 12 phones, you would find 12 different config files inside your Nimbus. So, and that file is just waiting for the phone to come grab. So the question is, does the phone know where that's at? And initially it doesn't. It could be anywhere because your Nimbus could be anywhere. So the key there is to go to the phone. So you've got them plugged in, for example. Let's just go back to where we were. And we've got a phone sitting here on the local network. It's definitely not on the same network as the Simply Hosted. Log in. And you go to phone, auto provision. So this right there is where the phone is going to check in to see if there's a file. So I'm going to type in the provisioning server address. So it's http:// and then it's the address of the Nimbus. So let me just go ahead and copy that. Nope, I guess I could have just copied that. And then watch this, CQ phone files. Do you see what's happening here? That is that's the folder that we just looked at. CQ phone files folder, and it's in your HTML folder. So the HTML is the stuff that's available from the web. So it's HTTP, the address / CQ phone files. And if you've done CQ phones, you know that's the provisioning server. Even if you're doing on-site phones, if you're doing on-site phones, it would be HTTP:// 192.168.1.245 /CQ phone files. Okay. Oops. Because we ran out of space there. But in this case, we're doing a hosted, so it's going to be right there. One thing that's kind of interesting, and people are starting to take advantage of this, is you can have the phone actually check in to this and look for changes automatically. So you can set an interval down here or do it by the week. So if you make changes to that template, the phone's automatically going to go grab it. It's just some people do it. So in this case, I'm actually going to turn that off for now. And I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so right away, that phone, if you were in my office, you would see that phone is rebooting. So it's going to go check in to that server. It's going to look at that file, or that folder, I should say. and it's going to look to see if there's a config file that matches its MAC address. And if it is, it's going to grab all of the stuff inside that file, and sure enough, it's going to be then a remote phone off this system. So that's kind of the procedure for programming the CQ phones on a Simply Hosted. It's really actually not that different from an on-prem solution, except that you're going to be using the public IP for the SIP server. Make your templates, assign them, and then go to your phones and tell them where the server is. One thing we can do for you as well is if you have 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 different phones, and you don't want to go to every single one and put that in, and you don't have option 66, which fills that in for you, you can send us a list of your MAC addresses, and then we have a server that we can put those in, and then every time a CQ phone boots up, it checks that server automatically. And if we put that in, if we've put that in for you, you don't have to worry about it. We will tell it to look at your public IP for the server, and it's going to grab that for you. So if you've got a large number and you want to send us that CSV file MAC addresses, we can put that in for you. And when they check in, the server will say, yeah, go to 149.28.119.217/CQ phone files. And at that point, you'd be all set. So keep that in your back pocket. Useful if you've got a large number of phones to provision. So hopefully that clears up kind of a Simply Hosted install. It's really not that different. It's just a lot faster, and in some cases easier, I think. If you have any questions, as always, give us a call. Otherwise, have a great day.